I want to take a look at a clip from Fareed Zakaria's show, and let me see if I can get this. It's disappeared on me, the clip I'm referencing. Here we go. On CNN. And he really nicely walks through how, and let me just preface all this by saying, I'm not, as we walk through some facts here, I'm not saying that the economy is perfect and there's no problem. There are huge problems, unique ones now, but also the underlying ones that we're always dealing with it because of our broken political system and so many people not buying into the proper ideology to fix these problems are constantly present. And those are painful. And right now prices are still high and all of that. So this is not you should feel great right now about the economy. It's when you compare current metrics to other metrics we use to judge the quality of an economy, Biden has actually overseen a remarkable recovery since the peak of COVID and the economic crisis that caused. And one of the reasons I want to do this segment, I'll show you Fareed Zakaria in a second, and then we'll look at a piece from Bloomberg, is because while Biden got a whole lot of blame, a whole lot for inflation, even though when you dive into why there was inflation, why gas prices, it had nothing to do with who the president was, but he got tons of blame. As we go into 2024, his presidential re-election bid, I really hope he gets more credit for, even though we know the president isn't solely responsible for the economy, I do think Democrats and Biden did some really good things. The American Rescue Plan, right when Biden got into office, that could have contributed. But if he's going to get all that blame, I hope he gets more credit in the eyes of the American people for the recovery we've seen. That, as Fareed Zakaria will note, and this Bloomberg piece will note, has been better than other comparable economies in the world, other major economies, and also historically just remarkable when you compare it to other recoveries. So with that being said, here's this, and then we'll discuss.
Here's my take. America's debt ceiling crisis once again provoked the usual commentary about how it shows the country is basically dysfunctional. But the truth is, this unprovoked madness, causing self-inflicted wounds, took place against a backdrop of astonishing strength. The facts cannot be disputed. The United States has recovered from the pandemic faster than any major economy in the world. As Bloomberg's Matthew Winkler recently points out, unemployment is stunningly low. GDP growth has grown at 3 times the average pace as under Donald Trump. Real incomes are rising. Manufacturing is booming, and inflation has now eased for 10 straight months. Even the budget deficit, which was at 15.6% of GDP at the end of the Trump presidency, dropped to 5.5% of GDP at the end of last year. The picture is even better when viewed more broadly. The U.S. remains the world's leader.
And then he goes into interesting segment. I'll try to throw this clip in the description as well as the article we'll take a look at in case you want to dive into more of the details. Every time I say that, there's about a 50% chance when I wrap up the show I completely forget. So feel free to find it on your own if I do. But I'll try to put this in the description for you all to take a look at, because he really interesting segment as a whole. He goes through all the different sectors of the economy and just different ways that we're comparing, and the narrative that America's falling apart and is about to be destroyed economically by all these other countries, and Biden's wokeism is going to be the end of us is not accurate. And that's important to note, not because we just want to pound our own chest all the time, no, but because facts matter. And whenever we have seen a really remarkable recovery, doesn't mean it's been good enough, doesn't mean wealth inequality isn't still off the charts and got even worse during this COVID crisis and the recovery and all of that. And that needs to be addressed in a systemic way that's going to take a political, progressive takeover of a lot of these positions of power through our democracy, a good takeover. And that's the goal all along. But in the short term, when we compare this to other, as I said, recoveries, it's been pretty stunning. And if you're going to blame Biden constantly for inflation and gas prices, I think you should give him credit for this. Not that a president has not that a president at least has as huge of an effect on the economy as people pretend that they do. But this article, it's being highlighted by the Washington Post, but it's actually a Bloomberg piece originally by Matthew A. Winkler, and it's titled "The Truth About the Biden Economy." Now that President Joe Biden has announced he is seeking a second term in office, the most pressing question may be why. After all, every survey of public opinion finds the view of the U.S. economy is somewhere between dismal and dire. And let's see here. One of the things that is actually starting to bother me, not that Biden doesn't have huge problems. He does, of course. All politicians almost are so far from perfect, absolutely. But when you compare his presidency to all of the presidencies in our lifetime for decades, you compare him to even Democratic presidents, his legislative record has been huge. Not everything that we wanted it to be, but huge. Way more than I expected, honestly. American Rescue Plan, the Infrastructure Bill, Inflation Reduction Act, the Chips and Science Act, etc. And the economy recovered way better than a lot of people expected. And the fact that still his polling is so bad is unfortunate. I think it does have a lot to do with kind of his optical problems and communication and stuff, but the record on paper is pretty impressive. Continuing, start with the fact that the economy during Biden's 27 months in the White House witnessed the greatest and fastest recovery of gross domestic product in modern times, an experience unmatched by any administration in at least half a century, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. That the U.S. has outperformed every major developed economy in recovering from a pandemic that claimed more than 1 million American lives should dispel any notion the 46th president inherited a situation that was anything remotely like his 12 post-World War II predecessors. And just zero in on this. Outperformed every major developed economy in recovering from a pandemic. And it's kind of, it reminds me of when people would say Biden caused inflation because of his woke Green New Deal agenda that hasn't even been passed yet. And you would say, okay, if that's the reason for inflation, why are other countries also experiencing inflation? Some of them more than we are. Biden caused that everywhere? That doesn't make sense. So in comparing us to other countries, it's actually been pretty good. Growth in gross domestic product exceeding 3% is three times the average under Donald Trump, paving the way for record corporate earnings, the lowest corporate debt ratios, rising real income, surging homeowners' equity in real estate to go along with the lowest mortgage delinquency rate on record, and household checking accounts flushed with some $5 trillion of cash. And know your 401k has not suffered under Biden. The benchmark S&P 500 index is up 23% since the November 2020 election. I just have to repeat again, the way he's wording that, it does sound like you're doing just all right. That's not my stance. We're just looking at the facts, though, to compare. For all that, the labor market is the real star. No president since Lyndon Johnson can match Biden's record here. He's created the equivalent of 6 times more jobs than the last 3 Republican presidents combined. Some 824,000 jobs were created alone in the high-paying manufacturing sector amid the biggest commitment to rebuilding roads, airports, bridges, and ports since the Eisenhower administration's new national highways. And on jobs, it's hilarious. And unemployment, I've debated many Trump supporters who will say, when I say, why do you like Trump so much? They'll say a few different things. One of them often is the economy, just so good. Trump did it all. And you point out, and this doesn't really stick with, they don't really care about this, but you point out that that's just kind of, it was the continuation of trends under Obama. If you were to just project how the economy was going to go after Obama left office, it just kind of kept a chugging. All of the recovery after the Great Recession happened under Obama, and then Trump just took that over. But okay, unemployment got down, didn't drop as much as what happened under Obama, but it did get down to historic lows under Trump. Now it's back to historic lows under Biden. So it's impressive to you that Trump was able to bring it from pretty low to a little bit more low, or it got that under him. He didn't necessarily do it, but we use that lingo. But it's not impressive to you that Biden was president while it went from high to back to those lows under Trump. Strange. Almost like you're not being good faith with me. Can you imagine? And then we have a jobless rate that is the lowest in a peacetime economy since World War II, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. Consider that unemployment is at all-time lows in 24 states and less than 3% in 21. According to data compiled by Bloomberg, the unemployment rate for blacks has never been lower, nor has the gap with the overall jobless rate been narrower. To be sure, the number of, it talks about everyone's predicting recessions, but it keeps not happening. Biden will be hard pressed to build upon the unprecedented improvement in the federal budget deficit as a percentage of GDP, shrinking it to 5.52% from 15.6%, which of course Republicans say they really want to cut the deficit, and Biden has actually done that. And there's a lot more in this. I probably missed stuff, but I know it's boring when I just read. Super interesting though. And all of that happened while it wasn't just about the economic recovery. It was also about long-lasting, really impactful legislation I've gone through more specifically in the past. But a good example of this is we were able to have that happen while also doing the largest investment in green energy in the history of the world. That's awesome. And lowering prescription drug costs as a part of that same deal, and extending ACA coverage and stuff like that. So really great that that's the reality. We got to keep addressing the underlying problems. But from a political analysis standpoint, I really hope Biden, as he runs for re-election, gets more credit on this and more people perceive this recovery as something that should be associated with Biden. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are able to be uploaded to the YouTube channel, plus get the bonus show on the weekends, you can do so by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. That's lukebeasleyshow.com/membership, and there's a link in the description.